Special Forces versus the Army. Not a fight with rifles, a fight over them, over who gets to choose. One of them is allowed to buy its own, not get it issued like everyone else. Buy it, on its own checkbook, written into federal law. When Special Forces wants a pistol, it walks past the one the Army spent years trying to settle on and buys a Glock off a commercial shelf. $320. Special Operations Command, the only corner of the military that shops for itself. It writes its own rules. It signs its own checks. It does not stand in the Army's line. Give a regular soldier no choice, and he carries what he is issued. Give this command a choice, and it never once picks the gun the soldier is handed. Not in 40 years. Why that door exists is the real story. Who cut the key? What it cost the 8 men who died before anyone could walk through it. A pistol so heavy, most operators would not carry it. A rifle Delta gave up on America to build in Germany. A caliber the operators proved out while the Army bet a decade on a different one. The Army's answer to all of it filled 350 pages. Its own chief of staff said he could do the whole job with a credit card and a call to Cabela's. One country arming itself twice. One of the buyers never has to wait. Desert 1, April 1980. A stretch of Iranian salt flat, 200 miles from Tehran, chosen because it was empty. 8 American servicemen died there in a single night, and not one of them died fighting. The mission was a rescue. 52 American hostages had been held in the seized embassy in Tehran since the previous November. The plan sent 8 Navy helicopters across the desert to a secret refueling point, codenamed Desert 1, where they would meet Air Force transports, top off, and push on to the capital. It needed 6 helicopters to go. Only 5 arrived able to fly. The commander on the ground called it off. Then, lifting away in a brownout of its own dust, one of the helicopters drifted into a parked transport plane full of fuel and men. Both aircraft went up, 8 dead. The rescue force fully home, having never reached the city, leaving the wreckage and the bodies behind on the sand. The hostages came home the following January, freed by diplomacy, not by force. What did not recover so easily was the American military's belief that it could run this kind of mission at all. The Pentagon did what institutions do after a disaster. It commissioned a report. A retired admiral named James Holloway led a review group of 6 senior officers, and that August they handed in their findings. The Holloway report did not blame the pilots or the weather. It blamed the architecture. There had been no standing organization for this, no permanent joint command, no shared equipment, no team that trained together for exactly this kind of raid. Because no such organization existed, the report found, the planners had to start, in its own word, literally from the beginning. Build a task force, find a staff, pick the units, train the force, from scratch. For a mission with 52 lives and a ticking clock, sit with that. The most powerful military on Earth, and when it needed a scalpel, it had to forge one overnight, out of parts borrowed from 4 services that did not practice together. The fix took 6 years and an act of Congress, but the lesson landed that night on the salt flat, in the light of a burning transport. If Special Operations was going to be its own kind of war, it could not keep borrowing the regular military's tools and hoping they fit. It would need its own. It would need its own everything. 1986, Washington. 2 senators write the fix into law. Sam Nunn and William Cohen had watched Desert 1, then watched a second failure in Grenada 3 years later, where the services again could barely talk to each other. They stopped waiting for the Pentagon to reform itself. They wrote the reform into the defense bill. The Nunn-Cohen Amendment created United States Special Operations Command. On paper, it looks like the other unified commands, a 4-star headquarters with forces assigned to it. It is not like the others, and the difference is the whole reason this video exists. Every other command is handed its troops and its gear by the services. The Army trains and equips soldiers. The Navy trains and equips sailors. The commands just employ them. Special Operations Command was given something none of the others got: its own money and the authority to spend it. Congress created a dedicated budget line for special operations, walled off inside the Pentagon's books, that the command controls directly. With it, the Special Operations Commander can develop and buy the gear his operators need without asking the Army, the Navy, or the Air Force first. In plain terms, Congress handed one general a checkbook and told him he did not have to shop at the company store. Be precise about one limit, because it matters later. It is not a blank check. It only covers gear that is unique to the mission, and in some corners the command has even less freedom than a regular service. For the ordinary things, boots, trucks, standard ammunition, it still shops at the company store like everyone else. But narrow and powerful is enough. Because the moment you give one customer the freedom to choose, you get to run an experiment no accountant ever authorized. You get to see what America's most demanding gunfighters buy when the Army is not allowed to decide for them. The answer, for 40 years, has been simple: not what the Army buys. The first thing they bought with the new checkbook was a pistol, a very large pistol. 1996. A crate arrives at a Special Operations armory. Inside is the biggest handgun the United States ever issued, the Mark 23. Heckler & Koch built it to a Special Operations requirement for what the paperwork actually called an offensive handgun, not a sidearm, not a last-ditch weapon for when the rifle runs dry, an offensive pistol, meant to be a thing you attack with. Look at what that requirement produced. Nearly a foot long, almost 5 pounds with its laser aiming module and its suppressor screwed on. A pistol that weighs about what a loaded submachine gun weighs, shipped in a fitted case like a piece of camera equipment. The operators had a nickname for it inside a year: the crew-served pistol. A crew-served weapon is something like a heavy machine gun, a thing so big it takes more than one man to run. They were calling their handgun a machine gun as a joke. And here is the part that matters for the rest of this story. The checkbook that was supposed to let the experts buy exactly what they needed had just bought them a pistol most of them did not want to carry. Too big for a holster, too heavy on a belt already loaded with gear. The reports out of the community were blunt. The gun designed to be strapped on for the assault mostly got left in the arms room or pushed off onto whoever had a spare hand for it, the specialists. Anyone with room for 5 pounds of pistol. Now say the honest thing, because it protects the rest of the video. The Army did not do this. The Marines did not do this. Special Operations Command did this to itself. The same freedom that lets an expert buy a scalpel also lets him buy a sledgehammer and call it a scalpel, if the requirement is written by people in love with capability, and nobody in the room is allowed to say, too heavy. The checkbook is not magic. It only works when the people holding it choose well. The Mark 23 is the proof that they do not always. Keep that pistol in mind. In a few chapters, the Army is going to run its own handgun program, and it is going to fail in a way that looks nothing like this and everything like this. Same object, opposite disease. For now, the giant pistol goes back in its case. The next fight was not about a pistol at all. It was about the rifle every operator carried, and a habit the Army would not pick up for another 20 years. 1994. A workshop at a Navy base in Indiana. Somebody is shortening a barrel. The place is Naval Surface Warfare Center Crane, and for the next 30 years it becomes the quiet engine room of this entire story. Crane is where Special Operations does its tinkering. Not a factory, a workshop, staffed by engineers whose whole job is to take a service weapon and turn it into an operator's weapon. The service weapon in 1994 was the M4 carbine, a capable gun. It fired in bursts, 3 rounds a squeeze, a setting the Army chose to stop young soldiers from spraying ammunition. Special Operations looked at that and made a different call. Their people would not panic. Their people needed to hold the trigger down and keep it down. So Crane built them a version that did, the M4A1, fully automatic, with a heavier barrel that could take the heat of sustained fire without drooping. Then they hung a system on it. The program was called SOPMOD, and it was less a gun than a box of parts. A rail on the front so you could bolt on optics, lights, lasers, and grips in any combination. A short scope for daylight. An infrared laser for the dark. A suppressor. The operator could build the rifle the mission wanted the night before the mission. This was the command's whole philosophy in metal. Not the perfect rifle designed over a decade. A good enough rifle you could reconfigure by hand tonight. The regular army watched all of this and waited. For nearly 20 years, the ordinary infantryman carried the burst-fire M4, while the operator 2 bases over carried the full-auto A1 with the rails and the glass. The Army knew the A1 was better. It had watched Special Operations run it in 2 wars. It did not move, because moving meant a program, and a program meant money and paperwork and a decade of committees. Finally, around 2013, the Army began converting its own M4s to the A1 standard, full auto, heavier barrel. Roughly 300,000 carbines, rebuilt to catch up to a configuration Special Operations had been carrying since the Clinton administration. Think about the private who carried the burst-fire version through those 20 years. Same war, same enemy. A rifle the Army itself already knew was second best, and no checkbook of his own to do a thing about it. He did not get a vote on his own rifle. He got issued one and told to make it work. That is the first mechanism in this story, and it is the gentle one. Not rebellion, not a foreign rifle, just a workshop that fixed the standard gun early, and a giant institution that copied the homework 20 years late. Nobody broke any rules. The operators simply got to the good answer first, because the checkbook let them, and the Army got there when the paperwork finally allowed it. The next operator did not want to wait for a workshop to improve the American rifle. He wanted a different rifle, and he was willing to leave the country to get it. 2004, Oberndorf, Germany. An American sergeant is standing on a factory floor that does not belong to America. His name is Larry Vickers. He is a Delta Force operator and one of the unit's weapons men, and he has a complaint about the M4 that Crane's rails cannot fix. It is the gun's heart. The American rifle runs on a system that pipes hot gas from the fired round straight back into the working parts. Light and accurate, and it cooks itself filthy, especially with a suppressor on, especially in the close, dirty, full-auto shooting that is Delta's whole life. Vickers did not ask Crane to tune it. He went to Heckler & Koch in Germany and asked them to change the heart. Swap the gas system for a piston, a small rod that shoves the parts back mechanically and keeps the filth out of the gun. HK had a design. Delta helped finish it. And by Vickers' own account, the very first weapons off that German assembly line went straight to Delta Force. They called it the HK-416. Read what that is plainly. America's most secret ground unit. Looked at the standard American rifle, decided it could not be fixed at home, and went to a foreign company to build a better one. Not a modification, an exit. This is the second mechanism, and it is nothing like the first. The M4A1 was patience. This was divorce. The operator did not wait for the Army to catch up, and he did not wait for Crane to file down the American gun. He replaced it with something built on another continent, to a private specification, that the regular soldier would not be issued for a decade, if ever. There is a story attached to this rifle that you have probably heard, and it has to be told carefully. When the raid that killed Osama bin Laden was over, reporting suggested the SEALs on target carried HK-416s. Suggested. It has never been officially confirmed, and this channel is not going to pretend it was. What is confirmed is the shape of it. The most talked about direct action mission of the century was reportedly carried out with a rifle Special Operations had to leave the country to buy because the American system could not give them what they wanted. Be fair to the Army here, because fairness is the whole game. The Army buys for 1 million people. It cannot fly to Germany every time one unit wants a piston. Scale is a real anchor, and it is going to come back. But hold that thought against what Special Operations kept doing, because the exits did not stop at rifles. The next one was a machine gun, and this time, the operators did not go abroad. They got a company to build them a weapon that did not exist yet. 2001. A market survey goes out to the gun industry. The Navy wants something nobody sells. The unit is Naval Special Warfare, the SEALs, and their problem is weight, measured on a human back. The standard belt-fed gun of the force was moving toward the M240, a superb, reliable machine gun that fires the heavy 7.62 round. It is also long and heavy. Picture the man who has to carry it. Out of the surf before dawn, soaked, the gun and a belt of that heavy ammunition on his back, still expected to move fast and shoot straight. Every pound is a pound he swam in with. The gun the SEALs loved was the old M60 family. Lighter, shorter, easier on a small raiding team, but aging out. So in January 2001, the SEALs did not pick from the catalog. They asked industry to build them something in between. The firepower of the big gun, closer to the weight of the small one. The Belgian company FN answered by taking its combat-proven light machine gun, the one that fires the smaller rifle round, and scaling it up to fire the heavy round in a shorter, lighter package. It came as one gun in two flavors, the Mark 46 in the lighter round, the Mark 48 in the heavy one, a private machine gun built to a body's tolerances because the operators asked and had the money to pay for the asking. 4 weapons now, and the same move every time. Tune it at home, or leave the country for it, or pay a company to invent it from scratch. The gear changes each chapter. The hand reaching for it never does. And you still do not have the answer the title promised. Not why the operators pick their own guns, why they are allowed to, decade after decade, while every auditor in Washington can see the bill. That answer is coming, and it is not the one you would guess. Hold on, because the next chapter is where the refusal stops looking like preference and starts looking like ruthlessness. Special Operations was about to buy a family of rifles, embrace it completely, and then kill half the family inside a single year. The regular Army takes decades to admit a gun was a mistake. Watch how fast the checkbook moves when it changes its mind. 2009. A Ranger battalion deploys to Afghanistan carrying a rifle the whole gun world had been waiting for, the SCAR. FN built it to a special operations requirement for one modular rifle family that could swap between the light rifle round and the heavy one. 2 members, the Mark 16 in 5.56, the standard rifle round, the Mark 17 in the heavier 7.62. Special Operations embraced it. In 2009, a Ranger battalion carried about 600 of them into combat, the first big field test. In April 2010, FN won the full contest. The SCAR was going to be the family rifle of American Special Operations. 10 weeks later, they killed half of it. In June 2010, Special Operations Command announced it was canceling the Mark 16, the light caliber version, the one most like the M4. Read the reason in the command's own flat words, because it is the whole mechanism in one sentence. The Mark 16, they said, does not provide enough of a performance advantage over the M4 to justify spending the command's limited funds when competing priorities are taken into consideration. Sit with the speed of that. Fielded in 2009, canceled in 2010. The Checkbook bought a rifle, tested it in a real war, decided the improvement was not worth the money, and pulled the plug inside 12 months. No hearings, no congressional order, no decade of committees defending a sunk cost. Just a customer looking at its own gun and saying, "This one is not worth it," and keeping the receipt. Compare that to how the regular Army behaves when it has bought the wrong thing, which is a story this channel has told more than once. The institution defends the mistake. It funds the mistake. It waits for the mistake to age out on its own rather than admit it in public. The checkbook does the opposite. Its whole advantage is that it can be wrong, fast, and cheap. Be fair about why. A Special Operations Command canceling a few hundred rifles is a memo. The Army canceling a rifle for 1 million soldiers is a national headline and a mothballed production line. The checkbook is not braver than the Army. It just has far less to lose when it changes its mind. But notice what they kept. They canceled the light one and held on to the Mark 17, the heavy caliber rifle. The one that could reach out and hit hard. That gun stayed in the fight, in armories across the Special Operations world for years. Remember the Mark 17. It is going to come back at the very end of this story in 2026. And how it leaves will tell you whether anything about this system has changed at all. For now, one family rifle, half of it already scrapped. The checkbook had proven it could buy fast and cut fast. What it had not yet done was the thing the title promised. It had not yet reached past the Army and bought a gun the Army was, at that exact moment, spending a fortune and 350 pages trying to choose for itself. That comes now. This is the one the whole video has been walking toward. 2015. While Special Operations quietly buys Glocks off the shelf, the United States Army launches one of the most mocked procurement programs of the decade. The Army wanted to replace the Beretta M9, its sidearm since the 80s. A reasonable goal. The execution became a legend. The program was called the Modular Handgun System, and to run a competition to pick one pistol, the Army wrote a requirements document that ran more than 350 pages. Of those 350 pages, by the count of a sitting United States Senator who read them, 39 contained the actual specifications for the weapon. The rest was process. The senator was John McCain, and in 2015, he put the program on blast in a report titled America's Most Wasted. But the line that survives belongs to the Army's own Chief of Staff. Asked about the whole expensive circus, General Mark Milley said, and this is close to his exact words, "You give me $17 million on a credit card, and I'll call Cabela's tonight, and I'll outfit every soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine with a pistol. And I'll get a discount on a bulk buy." The Army's own top general was saying the quiet part into a microphone, that his service had turned buying a handgun, a solved problem, a thing you can do at a sporting goods store on a Saturday, into a multi-year, 300-page ordeal. The competition eventually carried a contract ceiling of up to $580 million. Now, watch what Special Operations did while the Army wrote those pages. It bought the pistol it wanted, unit by unit, contract by contract, and it never wrote the novel. The Army's own elite Ranger Regiment went to a pure fleet of Glock 19s around 2015. Marine Special Operators were cleared to carry the Glock over their issued 45s. Army Special Forces units bought them too, at a base price of about $320 a gun. No $580 million competition, no 350 pages. A commercial handgun, off the shelf, for the price of a nice television. The story the community tells, and it is a story, not a court record, is that Special Forces did not even fight the system head-on. They wrote their own small requirement for a concealable pistol, a requirement a Glock happened to answer perfectly, and used their own checkbook to buy through the side door while the Army was still on page 1 of the big competition. Whether it was that deliberate or not, the outcome is documented, and the contrast is the entire point. And here, finally, is the thesis this whole video has been withholding. The regular soldier does not get to choose his gun. He is handed one, At the end of a process so long and so expensive, it produces a 300-page document and a general joking about Cabela's. The operator does get to choose. And when he chooses, he reaches past that entire apparatus and buys, for $320, the thing the giant machine spent years and a fortune trying to approve. That is the disease this video is actually about. Not that special operations has better taste. That in one country, one man gets the checkbook and the freedom, and the other man gets the process and the weight. And both are aiming at the same enemy. 2017, the Army finally picks its pistol. The operators had been carrying theirs for 2 years. By now, the pattern is so clear it barely needs narrating. So let the last 2 chapters do something harder than repeat it. Let them show the pattern running in real time, right now, in a fight that is not finished. It starts with a bullet. For years, special operations had chased range the way everyone in this story chases everything, by buying its own. Its snipers ran specialized rifles and specialized match ammunition the regular force never touched. Then, around 2017, they tested a commercial hunting cartridge called 6.5 Creedmoor against the military's standard 7.62, and the numbers were not close. In the command's own testing, the Creedmoor roughly doubled the chance of a first-round hit at 1,000 meters. Less drop, less drift, more reach out of the same rifles. In 2018, Special Operations began converting its sniper rifles to fire it. Here is where you have to be careful, because the easy version of this story is wrong. The easy version says Special Operations invented the future cartridge, and the Army stole it. That is not what happened. And this channel is not going to tell you it did. The truth is quieter and stranger. Special Operations was making the same bet everyone in this story makes, that the old rounds had run out of room, and that a smarter, heavier-hitting cartridge was worth the trouble. That idea had been floating in the Special Operations and marksmanship world for 2 decades. The regular Army heard a version of it, ran its own separate study, and reached a bigger, more radical conclusion. It would not just adopt a better sniper round. It would rebuild the entire infantry around a brand new 6.8mm cartridge designed to punch through modern body armor. A different bullet, a different program, a far bigger bet. So watch the fork. 2 customers standing at the same problem. The old round is not enough. Special Operations took the cheap, proven, off-the-shelf answer, began converting its sniper rifles, and moved on. The Army took the expensive, revolutionary, decade-long answer and bet its entire infantry on it. One reached for what worked this year. The other reached for what might dominate the next war. That is the same split you have watched all video, this time drawn in gunpowder. And then Special Operations did the most Special Operations thing possible. It looked at the Army's giant 6.8 bet, the biggest infantry caliber gamble in half a century, and refused to take it. It kept its own 6.5 path instead. The command whose gear pushes hardest at the limits of the old rounds is also the one that will not be dragged onto anyone else's program to replace them. Which brings the whole story to right now, to the fights still open as this video goes out, and to a rifle you were told to remember. 2026. 2 programs still at war over what an American should carry. Start with the Army's rifle, because it is the loudest fight in small arms right now. The new 6.8mm rifle, the one meant to defeat body armor, has a name that keeps changing. It was the XM5, then the XM7, and today it is the M7. 1 rifle, 3 names. The Army's biggest infantry weapon leap in 60 years. It is not going smoothly. Last year, an Army captain named Braden Trent stood up at a Marine Corps conference and presented a 52-page argument built on interviews with more than 150 soldiers who actually carry the thing. That the M7 is, in his words, unfit for use as a modern service rifle. Too heavy, too few rounds in the magazine. He described barrels wearing out fast under hard use. The price, he argued, of a round that runs at far higher pressure than anything the infantry has carried before. That is his claim, and only his, and it is contested. The rifle's maker, Sig Sauer, called his findings patently false and pointed out that the barrel meets and beats the Army's own endurance requirement. Both of those things are on the record. Pick your side later. What matters here is that the Army's flagship rifle is being publicly savaged by one of its own officers while the company defends it, in real time, in front of everyone. Now, the tell. This year, an Army spokesman said, and this is a direct quote, "The production line has changed to the XM8. That is the Army's own next version of the same rifle, not a rival to it. The Army has not bought any M7 rifles in the budget year that started in October. Future purchases, in the careful word the Pentagon uses when a program is wounded, are pre-decisional. The revolutionary rifle that was going to rearm the infantry is, for the moment, not being bought. And Special Operations? It still refuses to take the 6.8 platform at all. So does the Marine Corps. The two forces with the most freedom to choose both looked at the Army's big bet and said no, and kept saying it. Now the payoff you were promised. Remember the Mark 17, the heavy scar the Checkbook kept back in 2010? This year, Special Operations is replacing it. The new weapon is the Mark 24, built by an American company that swaps between the standard heavy round and that same 6.5 Creedmoor the operators proved out years ago. A Special Operations Command spokesman put it plainly. The weapon, he said, is currently in production and is a direct replacement for the Mark 17. A product manager called it a phenomenal, accurate weapon system for our operators. No 300 pages, no public war, a quiet, confident swap. The Checkbook doing in one contract what the Army is failing to do in the open. And because the pattern never rests, in May of this year, a Special Operations Engineering Center posted a new request to industry. It wants a hopped-up rifle that can push the standard light round out to 600 meters and beyond, out of a weapon that still works with the M4 family. While the Army's 6.8 revolution stalls, the Checkbook is already shopping for the next thing, the way it always has. The way it did in that workshop in Indiana in 1994. So here is where it actually stands in 2026 with nothing resolved. The Army has bet its infantry on a rifle its own captain calls unfit, and its own budget has stopped buying. Special Operations has quietly swapped its rifle, kept its own caliber, refused the Army's, and gone shopping for the next upgrade. Two customers, one country, one enemy waiting downrange. One of them still gets to choose. One of them still has to wait. The door that operator walks through was cut open decades ago, paid for on a salt flat in Iran by 8 men who never got to choose anything at all. So weigh the whole thing honestly, because the honest version is the only one worth 40 minutes. The easy story is that Special Operations has taste and the Army has bureaucracy. That is not the story. The story is about who holds the checkbook. Give one command the money and the freedom, and it does buy better, faster, smarter most of the time. It fixed the carbine early. It cut the failed rifle in a year. It bought the Glock for the price of a television. But hand that same freedom to that same command, and it also buys a 5-pound pistol nobody wants to carry. And the government's own auditors found that roughly 40% of Special Operations' own weapon programs ran over on cost or schedule, too. The checkbook is not wisdom. It is just permission. It lets you be right faster and wrong faster. And this command has been both. And be fair to the Army all the way to the end. It is not stupid. It is big. It buys for 1 million people, not for 70,000. It cannot fly to Germany for a piston, or Pure Fleet a commercial pistol on a whim, because when the Army picks wrong, it picks wrong by the 100,000. The 300 pages are the scar tissue of exactly that scale. Slow is the tax you pay for being everyone's army. But that is the trap, and it is the whole point. The operator trusted to choose is the one who could make almost any rifle work, on training, on support, on a dozen advantages the regular soldier will never have. The regular soldier is handed one gun and no way to trade it. He is the man who most needs the system to get it right, because he has no checkbook of his own to fix it when it does not. We handed the escape hatch to the people who needed it least, and welded it shut over the people who needed it most. They chose the German rifle. He was handed the burst-fire carbine. They chose the Glock. He waited 300 pages for his. They cut their losses in a year. He funds his mistakes for a decade. Same country, same wars, same enemy in the same valley. 2 arsenals, 1 checkbook, and 1 long line that only one man ever gets to skip. The door is still open. Somewhere tonight, an operator walks through it and a soldier waits his turn. The reflex is not just special operations. It is the whole system this channel keeps taking apart. The Army banned the best body armor in its inventory. It defended the worst earplug it ever issued. It spent decades failing to kill the M16. Same architecture, different gear. The full collection is in the playlist on your screen. If this made you want to go deeper, the sources that shape this video are linked in the description. And so is the vault where I keep the full script research and everything that didn't make the final cut. Subscribe for more.